Yep. I was just asking because, I mean, y'all were putting it as an economic driver, and I was trying to say, to me, it looked like limited access. So, I mean, that's just the way I'm looking at it. And it concerns me, and I'm concerned, like Commissioner Jones pointed out, that when it does constitute something, it moves it to the east also, and it will encompass that whole area in there. So, I mean, that's what I'm coming from. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any more public comment?
On the causeway out there right now, you have a serious problem with erosion, and the state has not fixed it. They keep dumping dirt in there. And dumping dirt in there is just dirt that washes away again. I know they're a private contractor that does that for the state, but nobody's supervising on what they dump in there. They just back a truck up there and dump it in there. 6 months later, what they dumped in there is washed away, and it's right now it's in danger. Next hurricane, it'll probably undermine the approach to the bridge. And I'm kind of aggravated with it, but you know, they blow you off when you call them about it. And the other side of the bridge where that stuff is washed in and filled, it's all come from the causeway that's washed out. And the state does nothing about it. They have a private contractor that's supposed to maintain that causeway, and he does just as little as he can do to get by for the lowest amount of money. Thank you.
Dan Tonsmeyer with Apalachicola Riverkeeper. I just want to make sure everybody understands this is not about denying George's good work and what the Apalachicola Maritime Museum has done. This is not about denying that that harbor can have great benefits given that all the things that have been committed to are done. But it is about the critical shoreline ordinance and a variance. The critical shoreline ordinance is the cornerstone of Franklin County's comprehensive plan to protect the water quality, the wildlife habitat, and the community character. Buffers, like the one in the Franklin County Comp Plan, are widely recognized as one of the best ways to prevent stormwater pollution impacts, protect wetlands from degradation, and maintain wildlife habitat. And ecological functions, including habitats along the Gulf, the bay, and the wetlands that provide additional filtering of water and nutrients that drive the food web. So we kind of have mixed up a lot of things here that I don't think are necessary. The protection of Georgia's shoreline can be done with whether you living shoreline is widely accepted as a way to go, that he can protect his property from erosion. We're not questioning the validity of the harbor idea. The St. James Island information that you were presented to was a big deal for us. And Alan may remember, sometimes I have a hard time remembering, about how we went to the mat on that so that they would respect the critical shoreline ordinance. They were given and this changed the whole comprehensive plan, that they would average out, they would meet that critical shoreline buffer. And they also restored the hydrology of the wetlands on that site to be better than what they were before, and they reduced any bad nutrient impacts off of that site. So we're looking at very different animals here. I think when Dan says putting in a bulkhead right along that is going to leave the critical shoreline intact, he needs to rethink that, because that literally destroys the critical shoreline. Wildlife benefit, it destroys not all of the Water Quality Protection Act, but when those bulkheads are overtopped and the sand is sucked out of those that has been placed in there, you're going to have wetland impacts. So I don't want to belabor that, but I think there are options that can be done that the developer can save himself a considerable amount of money over building a mile-long seawall or bulkhead or whatever you call it. That is no small expense in itself. I think it is important for you to understand that I sat through the majority of the trial in Portland where Florida sued Georgia over the protection of the bay. Georgia's primary defense was that it was Florida's mismanagement that caused the collapse of the bay. The Florida legal team did an outstanding job of explaining Florida government's management at every level to protect the bay. And I think those arguments were not lost on the special master, and that includes Franklin County. Preserving the integrity of the ordinance is critical to the future of the health of the bay. And I think there are avenues that George can approach. He doesn't need to build that wall along every inch of the front of his property and around the wetlands in order to get him some capacity to put spoil on those sites. And I think it can be, there are other opportunities to use that spoil for beneficial uses, that there might be some additional funding that he could work with. So I just want to emphasize the importance of protecting the integrity of the ordinance. I'll just mention that Georgia has a 75-foot streamside buffer statewide. I think the bulkhead is the biggest issue, that it could be pushed back out of the critical shoreline ordinance and done in a way that doesn't require this kind of variance that's a wholesale variance of the entire property. I'd appreciate your vote to deny a variance. Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you.
Next in the public that has not already spoken. I want to hear from the people that have not had an opportunity to speak.
Hello,
State
everyone.
your name for the record, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dottie Thornburg, and I live on St. George Island. The project, as it stands now, I have talked with several people on the island who are against the whole project as it stands currently. The questions arise from the riverkeeper's position, and that is some of the negativity. The second is, how do you get a paddle boat in there with the oyster boats in there? The East Point Channel is already going to be dredged. Why doesn't some of the activity happen in East Point? Could Mr. Floyd offer something in writing to the oystermen or seafood workers, a 99-year lease, so that there is no misunderstanding or the threat of them being kicked out? Those are just some of the issues besides the variance. So myself, my husband are here today representing at least a half a dozen or so people from the island that would like for you to deny the variance. And to Mr. Lockley's point, let me just add one more thought. If you try to bring in everybody, all the oyster workers, 1,000 people that are not out there at $5 a pop is a good income. Thank you.
Any other public comment that has not had an opportunity?
Thank you, sir. Barbara Sanders, also an island resident. To reiterate some of the others, the choice today is not whether you should have a marina or not. The choice today is whether you should grant a variance of your ordinance, your critical habitat zone. I didn't know Dan wrote it. It's a really good ordinance. I'm glad y'all adopted it. It says really important things like that this commission recognizes the need to maintain the seafood industry and the aquatic recreational resources of Franklin County for the benefit of current and future residents, the kids and the grandkids down the road. Good water quality is essential in maintaining viable seafood and aquatic recreational resources. The intent of this ordinance is to maintain good water quality by protecting wetlands and by guiding development and land use on adjacent uplands, thereby creating a buffer. That's what Mark's telling you, a buffer to reduce the adverse impacts of pollution of freshwater and marine resources. The ordinance then goes on and has several criteria. The critical shoreline district, the purpose of that is to retain a natural low-maintenance vegetative buffer, not something built up 6 feet and planted in St. Augustine grass. Okay, that was editorial. I'm sorry, Dan. I don't know what they're going to plant it in. But there are requirements before he can even get to that point, such as an approved stormwater management plan. We haven't seen that. A clear demonstration of hardship. Mr. Schuler was trying to point out you can't create your own hardship. I also think there's case law to back up that monetary reasons are not a hardship. Yes, it will cost money to to truck the dirt off. Y'all had to do that. School board had to pay to get dirt brought in. But if you calculate, and I don't take credit for the math, but the area he wants to bulkhead is about a mile, and it's going to cost $250,000, $300,000 just to do that. So when you subtract that off of the trucking, maybe it's not such even a monetary hardship. I'm not the businessman, but he has to show hardship. He also has to, it says that alteration or clearing of the existing natural vegetation, except where the applicant demonstrates that without such alteration or clearing, no reasonable use could be made of the property. That's not our situation. The amount of alteration or clearing allowed shall be the minimal necessary and shall be accompanied by an approved mitigation plan. All that's been brought before this board is a request to let me do it. I'm not going to show you all of these other requirements. You're required to have a site plan. That's where we would bring in these commitments to the oystermen, where they're going to park once they unload their boats, whether they're going to be moored. These are where your planning department can have specifics that are in writing, like Dottie just said, and committed to, so that you can plan for the future. And that's what you should be doing. I ask that you not approve it. I have to say I have a sister-in-law from Georgia, and every time she comes down, she asks me when the paddle boat's going to start running because she can't wait to get on it. Those good plans don't outweigh the requirements of your ordinance, and I ask that you keep the ordinance not just for this project, but for all development in Franklin County. Thank you.
Any other public comment from someone who has not already had the opportunity to speak?
Thank you. My name is Ron Bloodworth. Most of you here know me. I used to stay on St. George Island in the 50s with old man Yurdy that watched a herd of cattle over there. When I built my home in '67 and moved my wife and 2 kids over there were only 12 people on the island, and we made 16. And the bridge had just started running then. It was completed in 1965. And I was there when St. George Island Gulf Beaches Corporation bought a beautiful brand new dredge boat, 10-inch dredge boat, and it was under the supervision of Mr. Norman Royster, who was also superintendent for big, I'm trying to think of the name of the McKenzie Tank Lines. They were part owner in the island at the time. And they did a lot of dredging over there, and I worked with him on that dredge boat. And this area that you're talking about, this critical zone, that was all pumped in. That was all underwater at one time, pumped in. And it looks to me like we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. This would be a much better plan than to sit here and let more of that shoreline erode than to go ahead and do something constructive and something good to it. Now the question about the oyster boats coming and going, when I've watched oyster boats all my life, when those guys put those boats in the water, they're not going to sit around, leave those boats there. They're gonna get to work, catch the oysters, come back and go home and be with their families. There's no big deal about an oyster boat maybe taking 10, 20, 30 minutes to load their stuff out of their truck and get out of there. Commissioner Lockley knows he's oystered, and he knows that when he puts his boat in the water, it doesn't stay there long at all before he's gone. So it's very seldom you're going to have probably 8 or 10 boats in there putting in and getting in and out of there at one time. But I urge you to take the advice of the committee, this recommended, the ordinance committee that recommended that you go ahead and pass this. There's no use to have these committees if you're not going to follow their recommendations. So I urge you, as a lifetime citizen of Franklin County, to go ahead and pass this ordinance, and let's get some good things going here. This will benefit the Boy Scouts, it'll benefit the oystermen, it will benefit tourism, and you're always going to have a few people that are going to try to stop a good thing. Old man Yurdy used to tell me, he says, you know, the only thing you got to do in Franklin County is sign and cash your paycheck. Everybody else will take care of your business for you. And there's always going to be a handful that's going to try to stop the second coming of Christ. And that's probably what we're looking at right here. Thank you. Have a good day.
Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, just a procedural.
Dan, I don't consider you to be public comment. I'm sorry. Any other public comment? Board recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Board of County Commissioners is now in session. We have been on this particular subject for almost 2 hours. We've heard a lot of presentations, some pros, some cons. And although I'm not here to make motions or seconds as a chairman, I do try to allow for due process. We've allowed Mr. Floyd to make his presentation. We've heard comments from the public. We've heard comments from the board here. We've heard a lot of concerns from the public addressing oyster tying up, oystermen being able to tie up, different things. I think there's some loose ends, in my opinion, as the chairman of this board, that needs to be tied up. I think there's some other things to be discussed. I don't want to see this project turned down at this time, nor do I want to see it approved. I think there's some more opportunities for staff, county staff, the project applicant to get together on tying up some of these loose ends. At this time, I would like someone to make a motion to table this to the next meeting, maybe a little bit longer, until we can work through some of these issues and present all the facts to the people so that everybody knows exactly what's going on. What I would like to see is a master plan for this whole project, for the whole scope of what you want to be done on this property. I think it would be advantageous to the applicant and advantageous to the public and to this board before rendering a decision that we know exactly what the applicant has proposed here. I know right now we're looking at a variance for a seawall around some of the property. I understand that. But when you're sitting here in our position, in my position, trying to make an informed decision, you got to have the facts to make that informed decision. And that's what I would like to see the board do at this time, and proceed forward and try to tie up some of the loose ends, and then come back and make a determination whether we want to grant this variance or whether we don't. But without having all the facts and all the information, it's hard to make an informed decision. That is the pleasure of the board, and I will now let the board have their say.
Mr. Chairman, before the board, and I know right where you're going, but in order to make a record that is protective of the board and the process, I would like to give Mr. Floyd an opportunity to ask questions of those persons who stood up today and gave testimony to the board. He does have a procedural right to ask them questions if he chooses to. And if the board is intending on tabling this matter, then I think we need to find out if he wants to question those people, which he's entitled to do, or to waive his right to ask them any questions. But I think he does have that right. Or you can just reserve and ask questions at the continued hearing, one or the other.
I can read it on the wall, but what I'd like to do is add a date certain. When can we come back and do this, just so it doesn't get dragged out 6 months down the road because somebody can't get together with the applicant. That's the thing.
The only people I've asked to get together with the applicant is county staff. They're here 5 days a week. I don't see 6 months taking to get some of these issues resolved and providing better information to the public. A date certain, I don't see how we establish that. I'm not trying to put this off for 6 months. I'm not trying to put this off for a year. What I'm trying to do is just get better information out to the public, whether they're in opposition or whether they're in support of the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Parrish. So if we can meet with staff, come to resolution within the next week or so, we could appear at the next commission meeting? Is that reasonable?
If we can get through the issues at hand and some of the questions that need to be answered,
And
then I would expect county staff to make a recommendation that it be put on the next agenda. If not, if it takes 3 weeks, then I would expect them, when the issues are resolved, to make the recommendation that is then put on the next agenda.
A second question is the call for a comprehensive plan of everything we plan to do on the property required in order to come back before the commission here, the county commission?
If you want us to address just the seawall,
Yes, sir.
the 50-foot setback on critical habitat,
Yes, sir.
I would say no. I would say that having a broad plan that people can actually see how you plan to develop this property would be advantageous on your part.
We have it here, actually.
I know, but I spent 2 hours on this morning, and I think there's still some things that need to be tied up and give better answers to some of the concerns of the constituency here this morning, for and against. I'm not trying to delay your project. I just think it's advantageous, as that's the way that we should proceed. I mean, I may not be correct. That's the way I feel. If you get an up and down vote here today, it may not turn out the way you want, or it could turn out the way you want. I don't know, but I'm trying to give you every opportunity to present all the information and address some of the concerns of the public before this board is put on the spot to vote your project up or down.
You know, actually, we've spent quite a bit of time with county staff. And I believe that the question I put before Mark is pivotal, and that is, are you still of the opinion that because the basin is man-made, that there is no critical habitat?
Mr. Chairman, I don't recommend that we
All right, well,
negotiate this.
then I would just call, I just call for a vote up or down.
I've stated my opinion.
And I understand.
And it's up to the applicant. If he wants the board to take a vote today, we will take a vote.
And if it's turned down, I'll just move on with a different plan. I mean, that's.
Is that the way you'd like to proceed?
Vote.
I don't want to drag this out. I've been at it for 3 years.
Okay.
I tell you what, we'll if we can meet with staff over the next 2 weeks, we'll be at the next commission meeting.
Wait a minute, you just said you want to move ahead on it, and now he went and said something, now you don't want to move ahead on it? This is what we're saying, we had a concern, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
I've laid the groundwork.
I know.
And I've laid out the options.
You're either gonna take what the chairman, suggested to you, or either it's a up or down. It's a up or down. Dan, you know that.
I know.
You know that.
He's an
This
advisor.
is not a game, Mr. Floyd. This is not
Vote on
a
it.
game.
Vote on it.
This is, this is straight
This
on.
is a nice marina, I'd like to see it, if you can work it out in the next 2 or 3
I mean, we
weeks,
wanna
you know
help
what
you
I'm
every way we can.
You know, the next 2 or 3 weeks, to try to work it out, because it'd be a good
Yeah.
thing for marina.
I don't want to feel, in respect of you, Commissioner Sanders, that I'm flip-flopping. I've put a lot of time and effort into this. I do have a plan B, and as much as I would rather do this, I think it's time to call for it. I mean, we can do it now, or we can do it at the next commission meeting, and I'll work with planning, but it's time. I mean, I've invested a lot of my time and life and funds in this project, and, you know, if we can't get, and I've worked with staff, we've had a lot of meetings, and if it's something we can't resolve in the next couple of weeks, we're not going to solve it in the next 3 months. We're down to that point.
We're not going 3 months.
No, I understand. We're going just the next commission meeting.
Just trying to give you the benefit to try to work something out and build a good, nice arena, get it worked out. If not, we'll vote on next time and it'll be over.
I think it's good having a short deadline, and let's just make the decision and come to the next commission meeting if we can.
It might not happen in the next commission meeting.
Next commission meeting would be my preference.
Well, no. If you can do that delay it for one, or table it to the next commission meeting.
We'll finalize it. And hopefully we'll find a compromise, you know.
Okay.
Make a motion to table.
Hang on with lost my train of thought here. I don't want to go through another 3-hour presentation. I mean, we've passed that now. We've taken public comment, for, pros, cons. We've done all of that. My only direction was to work with county staff to address some of the issues that have been brought up by the constituency. We'll come back and discuss if those issues have been worked out or what have you, and then we're going to move forward one way or the other. I don't want to go through next meeting, come back and have another 2.5, 3-hour meeting on this same subject and reevaluate everything we've talked about here today. So I just want to make that clear, that everybody knows where we're at, what we're doing. We're going to try to settle some of the issues, give the board more information, give the public more information, and then it'll be voted on up or down, Mr. Floyd, and I think that's advantageous for yourself. It gives the board time here to think about some of the evidence presented today. And that's all I'm trying to do is have due process, give you due process, give the public due process, and then we, at some point, if the board so desires to make a motion to table this until the next meeting, then we can move forward from there. It is the pleasure of the board on that issue.
Okay. Make a motion to table the next meeting.
We have a motion by Commissioner Massey. Do I have a second to table this to the next meeting?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Jones.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, discussion, if there's commissioner discussion, let the commissioners go first, but I do want to get a clear answer on the record because these same people in the public may not be here at the continuation of this. So if Mr. Floyd has any questions he wants to ask of these witnesses from the public, I think you need to strongly consider asking them now or just waiving the right to ask them any questions. I don't know, you may or may not have questions, but you have the right to if you want to.
Thank you. And thank you for your willingness to short step the process to the next meeting. And I'm just going to let Dan Garlick ask the questions because he's more technical savvy on these matters.
We'll see you next meeting.
Thank you, Dan. The board will recess for lunch. We will continue.
We had no vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what happens when we get crossed up here. But we have to do things like and make sure we have due process. Any further discussion? I think Commissioner Lasher, you had discussion?
That's all right. I would just wait till the next time.
Wait till next time. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. The board will recess for lunch. We will reconvene at 2 o'clock.
Sorry. 2 o'clock.